welcome back to another vlog. This is Dirty Pair the Motion Picture, commission vlog for Bennett Jackson. Thanks for backing. So this is the big Dirty Pair movie that came out near the end of the 80s, I believe. 87 maybe? Regardless, it came out after the first Dirty Pair series completed, and basically was what it says on the label. It was, let's do the same thing, but with a bigger budget and a little more visual flash and an hour and a half running time. And the results were interesting. They seem to have decided to lean very heavily into the visuals. This is a very pretty movie. It's also a movie with a lot of songs in it. Not like in the sense of being a musical, but just in the sense of there's a lot of sequences that basically just take a pop song. I'm assuming they were all written for the movie, but they have an 80s pop vibe to them. And just have that play while the sequence goes on. Could be a sequence of, like an action sequence, or just I remember one is just the girls flying over the planet. But yeah, it's sequences with no dialogue. Even some that seem to have implied dialogue in the animation, but no actual dialogue occurs. It's an interesting approach. Definitely something that would not work in a TV show. I think it works reasonably well here. Overall, it's kind of a Dirty Pair story. It's definitely got the action spy sci-fi parody thing that's a register they hit a lot. This felt a little Charlie's Angels-ish. The Kay and Yuri both come across as not the brightest, but excellent fighters and quite canny. They're just kind of ditzy as well, which is not a great register for them in my opinion. And the villain is, more biological experimentation. Another mad scientist. This time, he's super into eugenics. And wants to create like a genetically superior race to take over, and blah blah blah, space Nazis, blah. It's, again, territory that's been trod a lot. Once you've done Nazi space mice, that's not really a well that you can go back to. The fact that the show didn't pull off Nazi space mice that well just makes it worse. The big thing in this movie, of course, and the thing everybody has warned me about, is Carson D. Carson. Carson D. Carson is the worst, people keep telling me. Like, every time there's a male character that I don't like in Dirty Pair, people tell me, okay, he's bad, but Carson D. Carson is worse. And I've now gotten to Carson D. Carson, and y'all were right. Carson D. Carson is worse. He is the worst. He is awful. I hate him. He shows up and is immediately, better than the girls at their own areas of expertise. He outfights them, he outshoots them, he outsmarts them. He figures out how to get through the barrier thing through a combination of, intelligence, daring, and strength. And the girls aren't able to match it and have to find another way in. He's just better than them at everything, and he's an asshole about it. And, he's that dashing rogue type who's really just a complete jackass. He puts them down. He calls them unprofessional. He calls Kay weak for having feelings. It's bad. He's terrible. He is basically like, he's a huge part of what makes it feel Charlie's Angels-ish, in the sense that he's basically there to be this man that the girls can be inferior to. He's, there to reassert the sexist hierarchy of patriarchy. It doesn't matter that Kay and Yuri are amazing at what they do, that they pull off these fantastic feats, that they leave a wake of chaos and destruction, because here's a dude who's the same but more so. Who can show them up in every respect, and does, and condescends to them about it. I hate Carson D. Carson. The fact that Kay falls for him is even worse. That's what takes this from bad to bad fanfic bad. This is some self-insert bullshit here. I try to avoid the term because it's been so abused and so misused and misapplied. But he's a Marcy. He just blatantly is. He is inserted in the story to be perfect at everything and to have a main character fall in love with him and to be a jackass the whole time. He's awful. I mean, it's hard for me to express just how awful Carson D. Carson is. Other than him, which is a big ask because he's a huge part of the movie. Frankly, he is basically the movie's protagonist. Other than him, there's good stuff here. I like the use of the wine. I don't know if that's a real wine historically, and I'm not sure how 200-year-old wine would work. I would think it would be vinegar by now, if not, some kind of rotted goo. But okay. Let's take as a given that it's still wine. I actually like the use of it. I like the World War II connection because, again, the villain in this is a dude who's misapplying evolutionary concepts in ways that make no actual sense to arrive at a justification for his eugenics program. I also really like the Sedingas, I think they were called? Whatever they were, the aliens kind of rising up underneath everybody at the end, because the planet was divided between basically corporate capitalist and state capitalist civilizations. I mean, we were looking at basically an American pastiche and a Soviet pastiche, and that's what those two institutions were. Clarify what I mean about state capitalism. It's something that retains hierarchical power structures, emphasis on industrial production over individual well-being, lack of individual freedom, and social inflexibility. In other words, it retains all the negatives of capitalism, it just puts it all under state control instead of all under corporate control, which is the system we have in the US. Exact same thing, but it's all under the control of corporations instead of under the control of the state. In reality, most things nowadays are somewhere in between. The US is an example with an unusually strong corporate side and weak state side. China is a good example of an unusually strong state side and unusually weak corporate side, but when it comes down to it, they're still the same capitalist concepts. And because of that, they all share this same expansionist growth mentality of always consuming more and more and more. And the result has been environmental devastation that was already clearly on the horizon in the 1980s. So to see the planet itself rise up underneath them and destroy them was a great visual to kind of end on. That this is the end result of this so-called controlling evolution, of this kind of hierarchical thinking, this kind of oppression and control, and use of living people as resources. You end up with the world tearing itself up underneath you and destroying you. AKA what we're living in now. Because as I record this, we just had massive floods in the Midwest. Here on the East Coast, we've had this bizarre winter that keeps ending and then starting again and bouncing back and forth all over the place. There's, been terrible hurricanes. There's all kinds of shit going down that is very obviously the planet kicking back. Not in any kind of... I'm not attributing any kind of will to the planet, that's bullshit. But just in the sense of we have been poking a big, complicated system very hard, and all kinds of chain reactions have been going off, and now they are wrapping back around to us, and we're seeing the consequences of poking a big, complicated system very hard. These turn out to be unpleasant for us. The one other thing I wanted to bring up, the beginning of the movie. I adored the opening sequences. You do not see space elevators in much. I love space elevators, and even better, this was a space elevator with a ring station, which is a concept I also love. So, okay. Brief orbital mechanics lesson. At any given height, there's a certain speed you have to go, escape velocity, to escape gravity. If you're moving at less than that speed, gravity will pull you back down to the ground. If you're moving at exactly that speed, well, if you're moving at more than that speed, you go away from the planet and end up out in space. If you go at exactly that speed, gravity is pulling you back at the same rate your speed is pushing you out, and the result is an orbit. You just keep circling the planet without ever touching the ground or going further out into space. And at every height, that speed is different because gravity gets weaker as you go up. So the required speed goes down as you get higher. There's a height where the speed works out to be exactly right so that you're orbiting at the same speed the Earth is spinning, and so you stay above the same point on Earth the whole time. This is called geosynchronous orbit. It's really important. It's where we put most of our satellites, because that way we can just point at the receiver or the transmitter or whatever at them and leave it there, because they're always above the same spot. The way space elevators work is you build a really, really, really tall tower. Incredibly tall. Out to geosynchronous orbit and beyond. Now, the Earth is spinning, so the whole tower moves with the Earth. And because the tower is straight, the whole tower moves at the same speed. Which means at the bottom of the tower, you're moving much too slowly to go into orbit. You know, the speed at which Earth spins is not enough to launch things into orbit at the surface of the Earth. Gravity here is too strong, that's what keeps us all onto the planet. But as you go up the elevator, gravity is weakening and your speed is staying the same. So once you get out past geosynchronous orbit, just by climbing this elevator, you're now moving fast enough to be launched into space. You never had to fire off rockets or anything like that. You could just climb the elevator, which does not take anywhere near as much energy as launching a rocket. Tiny, tiny fraction of what it costs. And then you just let go, and you're flung off into space. It's a great way to launch things into space. It's a great way of getting between Earth and orbit. It just requires some super strong materials that we don't quite have, but we're actually pretty close. So that's the space elevator. You see that from time to time and stuff. I think we may even have seen it in Dirty Pair before, I'm not sure. Where it gets really cool is the ring station. So the idea there is you build multiple space elevators, and then at geosynchronous orbit height, you just build bridges between them. And you get this giant ring around the Earth. And that has all kinds of things you can do with it. First of all, you can launch from anywhere on the ring. All you have to do is push things out a little bit, and they're moving fast enough to go into orbit. On the other side of the ring, you're slightly below geosynchronous orbit, so a little shove down and things are headed down to the Earth. So it becomes very easy to transport stuff in either direction. You can live in it easily, it works just like a space station. And it allows you to move between the space elevators very easily. You don't see them in science fiction much at all. I have seen them occasionally in novels, but I can't think of another movie or show that I've seen that in. And here it is. And that's awesome. And I love it. I just wanted to share how much I enjoyed that, and frankly, kind of enjoyed it falling apart when they set off the bomb on the elevator, because that would also happen. A space elevator, well, like I just described, the lower parts are trying to fall to Earth because gravity is stronger than the centrifugal force, essentially. The outer parts, centrifugal force is stronger than gravity, so it's constantly being pulled. So it's under an enormous amount of tension. It's like a rubber band pulled taut. Even if you make it of, you can't even make it of steel, that's not strong enough. You need stuff that's even stronger. But even then, it's being pulled tight like a rubber band. And what happens when a rubber band snaps? That's essentially what they did to the space elevator, and it looked like that was what was happening, and I loved that. So A+ on that movie. In all, this movie was alright, but Carson D. Carson was the worst and dragged it heavily downward. What can you do? I think that's about it. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Check out my Patreon for early access to vlogs, essays, let's plays, and more. And I'll see you all next time. Bye!